Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. It's good to see you. Today, we're going to be jumping into the FlightFactor 767-300ER. This guy came out a couple of months ago to quite a lot of fanfare, and I've put off actually covering this plane because I've been busy. So I had the day off today on this lovely President's Day, cold President's Day up here in New England, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to jump in and run a flight in this. So today's flight is going to be Atlanta up to Chicago O'Hare. We're not running real-time weather. We're running some weather from earlier this morning, which should give us a nice, interesting approach into Chicago. So yeah, I'm really excited to show this plane off today. It's one of, if not the best plane, I believe, for X-Plane at the moment. Let me just go ahead and preface this whole thing by saying that this copy was provided to me as a review copy in the interest of full disclosure. That being said, I would happily have purchased this plane. I think it's a fantastic plane. I came into it a little leery because I thought it was just going to be a reskin of the 757. And if you recall the A350 that FlightFactor had put out previously, it was a neat plane, but in my mind it was a bit of a dud because there were some pretty key things that were missing that I should have been there. So I was very apprehensive and very skeptical as I approached the 767, and I have been completely blown away by this thing. I have had every expectation has been shattered, and it's a really incredible piece of kit. And hopefully that comes through as we're covering it here this afternoon. So let's go ahead and take a look at this thing on the outside, first of all. We got a lovely SkyTeam Delta livery here by Mr. Cranky65. We'll put a link down there. The external model of this, one of the big things that they have done for this is they have a pretty intense reflection engine that they've built into the plane. Some people like it, some people don't. It definitely does it does break some of the normal X-Plane things. It looks like it's a very shiny texture overall, but it's kind of a neat little thing to have in there. So I do leave it turned on just to kind of show off a little bit. But I mean, some people get into that, some people don't. It's not necessarily my thing. Jumping in the cockpit here, we are cold and dark. I've gone ahead and configured, basically put us into a ground state where we can start getting this thing going. Very similar to the 757 cockpit. In fact, I think it's almost identical. The 767 was built so that you could have the type rating from a 757 carry over. All the knobs, all the gizmos, all the gadgets, everything is in the same place, kind of where you would expect them. So this plane comes with a bunch of checklists and stuff, which are interesting and neat, but I don't particularly like them because I think they're kind of cumbersome to get to, and they don't really do good for showing you guys here on the videos how we're doing things. So I've gone ahead and put together my own set of checklists that we're going to walk through, and we might miss a few things here. We might, have a few extra things over there, but these are sort of the flows and the checks that I do as I've been flying this plane. So we'll get this thing going. First thing we want to do is crank on the batteries. FlightFactor does still have these not so great switch covers that I never managed to get them right. I always grab them in the wrong way, and they don't seem to work very well, but we'll suffer through them. So the battery's going to come on. We do have the GPU hooked up, so with any luck, we'll see once we turn standby power on here. External power is available. We'll open up both of the bus ties, open up the utility bus. That's going to start bringing this sucker to life, and then we're just going to move left to right across the cockpit and get rid of all the yellow lights. This may not be the proper way to do things, but it's the way that I've learned to do it. So we'll turn both of the yaw dampers on. We'll set the IRSs to nav. We will turn all the hydro pumps on, and then set these to auto. Disk drives, sure, turn the gens on. I don't think there's any reason not to. We'll come back to the APU. I got yelled at in a video previously because I left my APU on for too long. So we're going to leave that thing off until we go to leave. And with any luck, we won't forget to turn the APU on when we go to Pushback, because that's maybe something that I've done a couple times before. So the second panel looks pretty good here. Move over to the third panel, emergency lights. We go ahead and arm those. And then turn on these fuel pumps. We'll leave the cross feeds. We're not going to need the center pumps or the center tanks at all. Anti-ice can stay off. We'll get some lights on in this sucker. I like to turn my standby instrument lights on and then come down here to the front and turn my panel lights on. I probably should have done that first so we could see what we were doing, but hey, it happens. We'll crank our position lights on, and we need to get the logo light on. Come on, man. Show our pride here. And then we'll go ahead and crank on the window heats. Moving on down. No smoking seatbelt signs can come on. We'll set the pressurization to auto 2. We don't have to worry about these guys here. Moving over to the final panel, we'll set the temperatures to auto. You right there. Or I guess this is, I don't know, we'll set the air conditioning to auto. And this plane does have scroll wheel support. I have turned it off because I don't like scroll wheel stuff. Some planes I can deal with it. Some planes I'm not a fan of it. So this particular plane, I don't really care for it. Recirc trim air. Move this guy to auto as well. And then we'll turn our packs over to auto. Start to hear this thing come to life. Open up 1 isolation, 2 isolation, 3 isolation valves. Left engine bleed, right engine bleed, and the APU bleed can all come on. We don't have any of those running. We're actually getting our air from the ground, and we'll go over that here in just a second. But plane's starting to get cooled down in here, or warmed up, I don't know. So with that all done, we need to do one very, very important thing. If you've ever flown a FlightFactor plane before, you know that the one thing you're always going to want to do is kill that guy. So we're just going to push this a bunch.
Captain, I regret to inform you that the chief flight attendant has been...
And we get rid of him. I don't know why they put that in there. That thing is really annoying. Okay, so we'll come back to the pressurization and all that stuff. So we've got our overhead panel in a good state. We'll go ahead and move on to the forward panel. The autopilot is in good shape. The parking brake is on. Throttles are back. Fuel controls are off. Spoilers are disarmed. Flaps are forward. I'll go ahead and show you the menu system. Now, one of the things, and I think this is what makes the 6.7 vastly improved over the 5.7, is this menu system. If you recall in the 5.7 and previous FlightFactor planes, you had this kind of, in the 777, you had a menu system over here that was kind of like FlyJ Sims, but it was kind of weird to use for me. And in the 5.7, you had a menu system that was out of the X-Plane menu that I thought was even clunkier and really didn't like that at all. And now they've added this iPad system, which is kind of akin to the menu system they had in the A350, I should say. And I'm really happy with how this thing works. You can control, all of your general settings here. So if you wanted high challenge mode, which just adds, basically it guarantees that you're going to have a failure of some sort during your flight, you can do that. Real limits, if you overspeed the flaps, they're gone. You'll notice that I don't run with these. I don't like to have... once in a while, failures are okay, but I generally don't like to have them when I'm doing my videos and when I'm doing my flying. I just want to go fly. Real time is how long it takes for the IRS to align, how long it takes for the wheels or the engines to spool up, and load the plane, and just a few other things like that. And the rest of it's kind of explanatory. Obviously, like I said, it has mouse wheel support. We ain't using that. You'll be all right. Over on the ground side, in order to get the plane into a state where you can actually pull people in and pull gas in, you need the fuel truck, and you need to be in the gate config. Everything else, we've got a high pressure unit set up giving us air, and a GPU set up giving us juice. Down here we have the loading interface for adding people and fuel and cargo to the plane. I really like the way this is done, and we will come back to this once we get to the points where we're ready to add people, fuel, and cargo. Airplane menu, pretty self-explanatory. We need to open the left front door so we can actually get people on here. I like these winglets. I gotta show you guys these winglets. These winglets are enormous. Like, they must be as big as the fuselage, if not bigger. If we were to go inside the plane and look out, look how big those winglets are. That's crazy. I don't know if that's how big the real thing is, but they look pretty damn cool in here. Continuing through the menu system, we would have a list of failures if the failures were here. We could now also adjust some things about the avionics. I like to turn the true airspeed and the ground speed on. And then there's some other stuff if you care about that. And then a whole PA system. I haven't played around with this too much because, again, that's not the kind of thing that I simulate, but I know a lot of people really like this stuff. And if you were to keep the flight attendant alive and you were trying to keep him happy, these would be very important. So now that we've gone ahead and set the overhead panel, we've basically got the plane in a good state to sort of sit here on the ground. We're going to start the IRS alignment, so we'll pop down here to the FMC, hit that little activate button, hit the position in it, and we're at hit the clear. We're at KATL. Pop that in. Grab that. Put you in right there. Now we'll see. Watch the IRS as they do their aligning thing. It's going to take about 8 minutes or so for them to fully align. While that's going, before we put the route and all that, we're going to go ahead and load this plane up. I've gone ahead and set our flight plan, and I've gone ahead and asked SimBrief to do basically all the hard work for me. So SimBrief is telling us that on this flight we're going to have 177 passengers, 23,800 pounds of cargo, But I'm actually going to fudge that a little bit because I'm going to go with the zero fuel weight they give me. So the zero fuel weight they've given me is 260.1. And so I'm going to try to match that right there. So we're going to take, I don't know, 20,800 pounds off. 260.1. We're happy with that zero fuel weight. And as far as fuel goes, SimBeef has told us that we're going to have 33,230 pounds of fuel. Now this gives us enough gas so that we can make it to our alternate, which is Detroit, and then we also have an extra hour of flight time. So there's a lot of gas for us to carry on this flight, but we've also got an alternate that's quite a ways away from where we're flying to, and we want to have some extra gas just in case. So I've done all that through SimBrief, and you notice that the center of gravity is off. We'll hit the optimize CG. That's going to basically center everything out here. Now that we have everything configured, it's time to get this plane loaded up. Go ahead and hit the load unload button here, and it'll start to load the plane and add the gas. Now we can close that iPad out. So on the FMC, we just did the IRS alignment. That's doing its thing. We'll go ahead and start setting this sucker up. We're going to go ahead and head over to the route page and punch in KATL on the origin. And we're heading up to ORD, KORD. Good old Chicago O'Hare. Activate that sucker. I don't know how often you're supposed to hit exec and all that stuff. I generally hit exec a lot as I'm putting all this initial flight stuff in. So I may or may not be doing that right. Blasting out of Atlanta on 08 right. And on the KATL 1 departure. We're going to KATL, so there will be no transition. Execute that. Head over to the route page. Click on the old next page. Verify that KATL is the end of this departure, so that's good. From KATL, we're going to jump onto Glazer. So after Glazer, we're going to go ahead and hop on Q118, so Quebec 118. And we're going to take that all the way up to Mike Zulu Zulu. Mike Zulu Zulu happens to be the end of the route that we're going to be flying and the beginning of the star, so we'll punch that in real quick. Hit the departure and arrival page, arriving at a KORD. We're going to plan on coming in today on the VEEK-2 arrival. VEEK-2. And it's going to be from the MZZ transition. And the approach that we're planning on runway 27 left. So we'll go for the ILS 27 left. And we'll go put the Vogler transition in. Now, one of the things, these planes have a little trouble sometimes with the VNAV, so I'm going to go get rid of all discontinuities, even though that's kind of the wrong thing to do. But we're just going to punch them all out of here, and we'll kind of vector ourselves around and whatnot. So we'll get rid of these vectors. And we'll say from Possum, we're just going to go direct to Vulgar. And you wouldn't actually do this in the real world, but because these planes have problems with their VNAV systems, if there are any discontinuities in the plan, I like to just wipe out all the discos. If we do end up having to fly those vectors, we would go ahead and punch the heading in as we're approaching the waypoint, and that would take care of all of that for us. So it's a little bit more paying attention that we have to do once we get to the end of the flight. It sounds like the people and the fuel are all loaded up here. We're going to go ahead and pop back down to the old FMC. And then we'll finish up the perf information. So on the init ref page or the perf init page, we'll just punch in the gross weight. We're planning for, I don't know, I think 7.0 tons of reserves. And the cost index we'll be flying today is 25. Hopping over to the takeoff page, we'll take off flaps 5. And we'll tell it to give us the speeds. 1, 2, 3. CG is going to be 19%. That's going to give us a trim of 3.5, and we will take a derated takeoff at 45 degrees. So trim of 3.5, we'll punch that in real quick down here. Take a look at our trim guy, our trim indicator, our stab trim, whatever the hell we're going to call this thing. Move that to 3.5, like so. After we punch the stabilizer trim in, the next thing we're going to do is pop over to the glare shield, get this guy set up and ready to go. We will go ahead and arm the auto throttle, turn the flight director on. We'll leave the IAS at 147. I was told that Boeing standard procedure says that you set the IAS to V2, so we're going to do just that. Because we're taking off of runway 8 right, our initial heading that we're going to care about is 09 or 5. We'll punch that guy in here. And we'll make the initial altitude. Yeah, we'll leave it at 10,000. We'll just set that up here once we get up in the air. So now that we've got everybody on, everybody loaded, let's go and get the APU turned on. Do not want to forget that. Mighty inconvenient if we do. Hold the start button over there, wait for the click, and then move it back to on. I think this is supposed to automatically go back to on, but I've noticed that it doesn't. APU is indicated that it's up, so we'll turn the APU gen on. Turn the external power off. We'll get a nice satisfying click there. APU bleed has come on. We do have pressurization on that. So we'll pop on down here to our little menu. And first of all, we'll close that left front door. Got all people on board. That's good. Disconnect the high pressure unit. Disconnect the GPU. Everything seems to be in good shape. Fuel chuck can go, chocks can go, gate config can go away. So that's now going to bring me to the first of my little makeshift checklist that we put together. So we're going to say parking brake. Parking brake is set. Battery master switch is on. Landing gear is down. Flaps are retracted. Spoilers are retracted. APU is currently turned on. Hydraulic systems are normal. Electrical systems are normal. Emergency exit lights are armed. Engine and wing anti-ice is off. Window heat is on. Cabin signs have been set. No smoking on. Seatbelt signs are on. Isolation valves are currently on. Packs are on auto. Fuel quantity is 33,100 pounds. CDU has been set. Radios are set. Lights are set. MCP has been set. The altimeters here at Atlanta are 3015. So we'll punch that in. So you'll note that when we changed our altimeter, we got an alt disagree on our upper ECAM display. That is because the altitude that's showing between the pilot's altimeter and the co-pilot's altimeter are different, and we can fix that by pushing this little guy right here. And what that does is it will set the altimeter setting for all of the altimeters. I think we're ready to get Pushback, get out of here. We'll pull up the old iPad display. This time we'll pop outside because we want to watch this happen. And we'll go over to the airplane menu, head over to the ground menu, call the truck for Pushback. Like a demon in a terrifying movie, the Pushback truck emerges from the terminal, latches itself on, and says, "Ha ha, it's time to go." Pushback's complete. Hit the parking brake. We'll tell this guy to get out of here. Pushback on our own, ready for the before start checklist. Beacon is on. Thrust levers are idle. Fuel levers are cut off. Fuel pump switches are on. Packs can come off. And the pneumatic pressure we're showing is 47, which should be sufficient for engine start. That is the before start checklist. We'll start with engine number 2. Pop the overhead panel. Engine start will be on both. We'll pop engine 2 over to ground. Engine display over the engine. And we'll see the N2 begin to rise. We'll see the oil pressure start to come up. We want to bring the N2 to about 18-20%. Then we'll light them up. N1, EGT. That looks like one good engine to me. Let's make it 2. Head back over to the overhead panel. We'll do the same thing with engine number 1. Over to ground. Looks like 2 good engines to me. Pop the overhead panel here. Crank on pack 1. Pack 2. Nose gear light can come on. Or my turn off lights will keep on for the time, but keep off for the time being. Same with our wing light and our white light. Our strobe. Flaps are going to go to 5. Speed brake armed. Auto brake to RTO. Oops. Squawk Charlie. And we're ready for the after start checklist. APU can come off. Anti-ice will be off for the time being. Isolation switches can be turned off. Packs are on auto. And for our speed bugs, V1 of 131, V-rotate 138, V2 of 147. Recall. APU bleed valve is open, so we'll close that. APU gen can come off. Alright, so APU gen off is showing. That's just the APU's in its cooldown phase, so it'll shut off here in a second. That is the after start checklist. And taxi checklist, we'll do flight control check. Full left, check. Full right, check. Back, check. Forward, check. Full right rudder, check. And left rudder, check. Flaps are currently set to 5. Auto brake's on RTO. Speed brake is armed. And trim is set for 3.5 units. That is the taxi checklist. Approaching the runway here. Let's go lights. Get her lit up completely. Beep our flight attendant. Even though we already killed him. We'll beep him anyway. Alright, before takeoff checklist, clearance been received, lights are set, transponder has been set. And, let's talk about the KATL 1 departure. There are no altitude restrictions that we need to be concerned about. However, there's a 250 knot speed restriction at Rebecca that we will need to adhere to. So we do want to keep an eye on the autopilot and make sure that it does not go over 250 knots until we get to Rebecca. Otherwise, we're going to let the autopilot take over and do its thing. Go ahead and engage the LNAV. That'll get us a nice little magenta line there as we're starting to climb. And let's skedaddle out of here. Lights, camera, action. Engine stable. Takeoff power set. 80. V1 rotate. Positive rate. Gears coming up. Gauge the VNAV here. Let the autopilot set itself. Flaps. Taxi lights. Perhaps a little aggressive bringing the flaps up, but we won't crash. I hope not, at least. Perhaps very aggressive bringing the flaps up. Oops. At the takeoff checklist, gears up, flaps retracted, speed brake is disarmed, auto brake is off, APU is off. After takeoff complete. Across 10,000 feet, we'll crank the lights off. We are still restricted due to this departure that we're on. So we had to do a little bit of surgery on our route here. I realized that the FMC was not going to bring me down in time. Something got a little fudged up with the VNAV. So what we did is we reset the approach to make it once again to the 2.7 left, only this time we didn't put a transition in. I then went back and I deleted Possum, Giorgio, Monks, Pink from my arrival. So we're just going to go from KATL direct to the approach. And we'll kind of vector ourselves in once we get up there. In addition, what we've done is we've thrown a 7,000 foot altitude restriction at KATL. So that's going to move our top of descent forward fairly significantly. If we take a look at our progress page, we now have about 190 miles to our top of descent, or roughly roughly 25 minutes. So I'm not entirely sure why that got broken in the way that it did, but, you know, things like that happen, and you just kind of have to go putz around and get them fixed. So if you are trying to recreate this flight, that is one thing to be aware of. Probably something that I did wrong would be my guess. That's always my first guess. Alright, so we have just a hair over 10 minutes until we reach our top of descent. It's time to start talking about the arrival coming into Chicago Airport today. Just got the weather briefing. It looks like the conditions are going to be less than ideal. Winds are 19 at 4. 3.2 kilometer, or about a mile and a half visibility. Overcast 400 on the skies. Altimeter's 29 and the temperature is currently -7. So a few considerations to have in there. Number one, the clouds are pretty low. The ceiling is pretty low, so overcast 400. That's going to definitely put us on an ILS approach. We are currently set up and planning for the ILS 27 left. Additionally, we've got a temperature of -7, so there's a strong possibility of icing on our way in, especially as we're out over Lake Michigan and being held probably in those clouds for a little bit. So we will plan on running all of our anti-ice as soon as we have any signs of visible moisture. Looking at the Veek arrival, not really a whole lot for us to worry about here. We're coming up on the Marion VOR here momentarily. That's going to be about what our top of descent is. So Marion to Nyland to Veek, Boone, Hanny, Clouseau, Cato. After Cato, we're going to go ahead and start vectoring ourselves in for the ILS approach. And we have punched in the ILS approach for runway 27 left with no transition. That approach is going to have us coming in from Ebens. We went across Ebens at 4,000 feet, so after we cross Cato, we'll keep heading down to 4,000 feet until we get to Ebens, and then we'll bring ourselves in on the localizer there. If it comes down to it, this is a Cat 3 approach, or this could be a Cat 3 approach, I should say, but we're probably going to have to fly this Cat 2. That's going to put us 110 foot on the minimums, and should we have worse conditions once we get there, we could take it all the way down and auto land on the ground. I do not anticipate that's going to happen, though. So we'll plan for 110 foot minimums. In the event of a missed approach, we'll fly the published mist, which has taken the radial 267 outbound from Chicago. That's going to have us go direct to the Wasco intersection at 4,000 feet. And we'll fly a holdout there. I don't anticipate that's going to happen, but just in case we do. We are coming up on our top of descent. We'll pretend that we've been cleared down to 7,000 feet. So we'll punch 7 grand into our MCP. Note that the plane will not start going down until we tell it to actually go down. Once we cross the Marion VOR, I will go ahead and command a descent. Coming up on about 10 miles to top of descent, so we've gone ahead and put 7,000 into the MCP. We'll come on down to our old FMC here, McDo, whatever the hell you want to call it. Hit on the descent button, and we will hit descend now. A couple more housekeeping things as we're starting to make our way into Chicago here. We'll hop on down to the FMC, and we're going to set our VREF speeds up for approach. So we're going to land flaps 30. Flaps 30 is going to give us a VREF of 135 knots. In addition, we need to set our pressurization altitude. I think we should have probably done this a long time ago, but we're going to do it now. So we'll go ahead and hop onto the overhead panel here. Set our landing altitude to 680 feet. Not quite that much. We'll go for 650. And then the last thing that we need to do is set up our ILS radios. So ILS frequency for 27 left is 110.5. So we'll hop on over here, this guy. Give that bottom knob a little twist. Like so, and it turns on. So we're looking for 110.5. And the course we're coming in on is 273. It's our ILS radio is ready to go. Gets our approach speed all set up. And our pressurization will be set for landing. Coming up on 18,000 feet. Again, the altimeter in Chicago right now is 29er89er. We'll go ahead and punch that in. So 29er89er. Push the screw there so that it sets it for all of them. Starting to see Lake Michigan off to our right. We're also fairly close to where I grew up and also where I went to school. My little university here is going to be about 30 or so, 40 miles off to our back left. And my hometown is going to be kind of straight behind us or so, maybe 100 miles or so. Approach today is going to take us right over downtown Chicago. Beautiful, beautiful approach if you've ever flown to O'Hare. It's pretty freaking cool. And we will be running some payware scenery this evening. I can't remember actually who makes the scenery, but I'll link to it later. But it does give us the city of Chicago, and it also gives us some pretty nice winter textured scenery over at O'Hare. Coming up on 10,000 feet, there's the slowdown to 250. One of the things this plane does that I'm not a huge fan of is that it doesn't seem to account for the 250, or the 240 in this case, slowdown in its VNAV planning. So we are going to end up with an FMC message warning. That's going to tell us drag required, and we're going to be well above our altitude here, or our VNAV path. But this does give me an opportunity to showcase the size of the spoilers on this particular plane. So we'll pop on back here, check these things out. Very cool. Coming up on KATL, let's start thinking about our approach checklist. Approach briefing's been completed. Lights are set. Altimeters are set. Cabin signs are both on. Nav radios have been set. The speed brake is now armed. Auto brakes we're going to put on auto, max auto. On the anti-ice we're going to go ahead and crank on. That is the approach checklist. Pretend like ATC's given us a vector. We'll move off to 004 here, hit the select button, and we'll also take ourselves off of VNAV by moving to vertical speed mode, 1,500 feet per minute, 240 knots. Actually, we'll bring that speed back to 210 knots and start slowing it down. Some more speed off here, so we're going to use some spoilers. Get ourselves down below 210 knots so we can start pulling the flaps out. Start off commanding flaps 5. Bring ourselves on a nice intercept path here. Ourselves in localizer mode here. Intercept the localizer, then we'll go for approach. We can bring the altitude down to 3,000 if we'd like. That'll at least get us under the path. All right, should be crossing that localizer momentarily. Start to see the pink line here move, and the plane with any luck will intercept it. Assuming we have done everything correctly. There's 3,000 feet. Radio altimeter's alive. Alright, localizer's active. Start dropping the speed back. We're going to be 145 for this approach. Flaps full, and gears coming down. That wasn't the right order to do things, but it's alright. Now we are in the soup. We'll arm approach mode. Perhaps I dirtied myself up a little too soon here. Looks like we're starting to get the field out there. Again, won't call anything until we get a little closer. Just because X-Plane tends to do weird stuff. Glide slope's alive. Last thing we'll do is make sure we capture that. Okay, final approach checklist. Gears down, 3 green. Flaps are set. Clearance has been received. We are landing. Well, hopefully we're landing. That all depends on the next 30 seconds. I should punch in the missed approach altitude. And then 267. Okay. Land 3 green. Just in case we need to use the auto land, it's there. It's armed.
1,000.
Checked. Could it be that we're going to break out soon? Hope so. There's 600. There's the cloud deck.
500.
Airport in sight. My aircraft. Auto throttle off.
Minimums.
Landing.
$100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Versus green. Auto brakes out. Speed brakes out, I should say. 80 knots. Manual braking. Braking action is pretty awful right now. Reverser's in. Looks like you're getting off here on Echo. Well, and by Echo, I mean we're going to go all the way to the end. Wasn't super happy with that landing, but I kind of just wanted to get it down. I was a little bit afraid of what I was going to have to contend with in terms of runway distance, and looking at how the landing action was, I think I made the right decision to just plant it.
minimums.
Alright, lights off. You. Strobes and wings. Bring the APU on. 1, 2, 3. We'll take this around. Couple more taxiways. And after landing, lights are set, flaps are retracted, speed brakes are retracted, throttle brakes are off, and the APU is coming on. Yeah! Look at that. Park brake set. And APU is on. APU gen is on. APU bleed is on. Bring our red lights off. Bring our position lights off. And engines 1. And engines 2. Pop on the overhead panel. No smoke or seatbelt sign. Come off. There's us flipping over to APU gen. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Local time, it doesn't matter because you're watching this on well after the fact. I hope you enjoyed our flight today. It was a good time. That was a cool approach coming into Chicago like that. And I was pleased with how the weather panned out. Yeah, it's good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. I had a blast. Please do hit the follow button, hit the like button, hit the dislike button, drop a comment, say hello, see me on Twitch. Don't do any of that stuff. I actually don't really care. We'll definitely see you around. And do check out this awesome plane because I'm super, super happy with it. And I think you will too. Take it easy, y'all.